Hello, everyone. Welcome back to In the Yard Podcast with your hosts, Collin and Braeden Cox. And with the football season just about wrapped up about a month ago now, Braeden and I are going to be giving you our top 5 QBs going into the 2024 NFL season. Last year, we did a top 10. Um, you know, kind of a bit longer episode, but top 10 were actually one of our most viewed episodes. But this year we're doing just top 5, makes it a little harder. Makes it so a lot of big names are going to be left out on here. And Braeden and I are excited to give you our top 5 QBs here. And yeah, so Braeden, I think you said you wanted to go 1 to 5.
Yeah, I think that'd be far more interesting. We forgot to do this, but we should have checked what we put last year. Maybe you remember, and just see how
I
like
can remember my
closely
top
it
5.
resembles.
I had
Okay, that's
Mahomes,
fair.
Burrow, Hurts, maybe Josh Allen,
I
and
think
then
I had
like
Aaron Rodgers in there, man. I think I had it in mind, and he played 3 snaps this year. So
jeez. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that would have been cool to see, but to see like the comparisons. It's a good point, but it's fine.
yeah,
We could
we'll
always,
see.
and if anyone's really interested, they can go back and rewatch the
Yeah,
episode
for
from
sure,
then. Um,
for sure.
all right, so you want to start, Bray, or do you want me to start? I'll start with number one.
Yeah, you
Um,
start. I'll go
Obviously,
back and forth.
this guy's been balling out for the past 5 years. He's kind of made a statement name. He's almost a dynasty at this point. Kenny Pickett, what he's done in Pittsburgh, is just kind of unmatched at this point. And Steelers are going in the right direction here if they keep Kenny Pickett. He's the face of the franchise, and obviously he's done some good things there in Pittsburgh. Brand, do you agree?
Uh, I mean, you kind of caught me off guard. I probably wouldn't have had him at 1, but no, I'm just messing. I think the clear number 1 here has to be number 15, Patty Mahomes, coming off his third Super Bowl win in only 4 attempts, and in that one loss, losing to the GOAT. And we've previously talked about it here on the pod, but we if he gets another one or two, like we're definitely gonna have to start throwing his name in that conversation. He's still young. He's like 20, 27 or 28, something like that.
29, I think,
Um, so
or
he's
actually
still
maybe
got a lot
28.
of
I don't
years
know.
ahead of him. He's still got a ton of years ahead of him. The thing that made Tom Brady so great is he basically had 2 Hall of Fame careers
His
where
longevity, yeah.
he didn't win a Super Bowl for 10 years, right? He won 3 and then won 4 or something like that. Um, so I'm not sure if Mahomes will be able to like play until he's 43 or 44, whatever Tom was. But, at the current rate he's at, like I I don't I don't see why he wouldn't be able to at least be in the conversation. And again, we've talked about this on the pod before. Who's his real competition? Who is the Chiefs' real competition going into the 2024-25 season?
You'll see.
49ers again?
You'll see.
You know what I mean? It's like the Bengals, like they make the playoffs this year. I don't know. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah,
I think Mahomes is clearly the best quarterback in the NFL. I'm sure you agree with
yeah.
me there.
I'm sure it also ran into the issue, kind of making a list. All right, top 5, you got Mahomes one, obviously, and then from there you're like, okay, now
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
So I
You
don't
can
I
kind
don't
of go
think
anyway.
last year it was. I mean, last year is pretty undisputed that Mahomes is the number 1 QB, but now it's
Yeah.
just like solidified at this point. And he'll probably be number 1 on our list for the years to come. Um, so yeah, Mahomes obviously number 1 there, kind of easy pick, but 2 to 5 is where it's going to get a little interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So here's where the fun's going to happen. So Bray, do you still want to go 2 to 5, or do you want to go 5 to 2?
No, I think we still go 2 to 5 here.
Okay, all right. You could give me your 2.
Yeah. So my number 2 quarterback um, is going to be Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills here.
Okay.
Um, just because like we could sit here and argue right now that he's one of the best quarterbacks to never win a Super Bowl right now, and he's 20,
Right.
7 years old. Um, yeah, a little turnover prone, but like just the abilities across the board, right? He can beat you with his legs. He's probably got one of the best cannons in the NFL. Um, I don't have his stats. I can actually, yeah, his stats here: 4,300 passing yards, 66.4% completion rate, 29 to 18 touchdown interception ratio. So yeah, like he does need to limit the interceptions. And I think if he does, like the sky's the limit for him. The kryptonite though has been the Kansas City Chiefs and getting past it. This year looked like their best chance. I think. Well, they definitely they were favored in that game in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and you know a couple things went away for him, like the missed field goal that probably should have been a chip shot. Um, and we could, if a couple things go their way in that game, we could be having an entirely different conversation
Yeah.
about Josh Allen, his legacy with the Bills, the team as a whole. Um, but I'm gonna put him at 2 just because you hate to say like the potential's there because you know what he is, but it's like if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes in his division or in his conference, right? We could be talking about Josh Allen having maybe a ring or two,
Yeah.
couple
It's a
conference
good
championship
point. See,
appearances. He's only got one, but
my problem with Josh Allen at 2, Braeden, is like he's hasn't won the big game against Mahomes. Hasn't won against Burrow. I think he's played in one AFC championship, right? In
yeah,
the 2020 COVID year. So that's my knock on him, is just his inability to just fail against the Chiefs year in and year out. So for my number 2, Brandon, I know might be a little inconsistent here with my tape because this guy can't seem to beat the Chiefs either. I'm going Lamar Jackson. Um,
okay.
he had what I think it was MVP in like 2018 or 2019. Um,
Yeah.
and then he's probably going to win MVP again this year, so you can't knock him on that. But can't put him at
No,
one.
he did win MVP. Yeah, he's got 2.
Yeah, so he has 2 now.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why I'm kind of going Lamar there. I don't love the pick. Like I said, like 2 to 5 is kind of a toss up. It can really be anyone. But yeah, I just think that you can't really argue 2 MVPs. He always chokes in the playoffs, it seems. But 2 MVPs, can't argue that. And just he's able to really ball out in the regular season as long as he's healthy, as we said before here. Um, but just can't seem to get past the Chiefs like anyone else can. So I'm going with Lamar at 2.
Yeah, and I think that's completely fair. Definitely based off of this year in particular, right? Because he had an MVP season.
Mm-hmm.
He looked like, obviously like Mahomes is going to be the best quarterback in the NFL, but Lamar looked like at times like really the only challenger to him, maybe because he could beat you in so many different ways. I look back at the game, particularly against Jacksonville this year. Um, watch that game top to bottom, and like
Mm-hmm.
he dazzled
Right.
throughout the whole game. You know what I mean? And of course, there's other instances of him doing it. Um, you know, they played the Texans in the playoffs in the divisional round, and that first half like didn't go probably as they expected. I think they were still leading or may have been tied. I don't remember exactly at halftime. But the team really rallied around him. It sounded like he went in the locker room, gave him a good pep talk or yelling, whatever it may have been. And they proceeded to basically blow them out in the second half. So, I think that's perfectly fair. The one thing that I will say about Lamar versus Josh Allen in this case is Josh Allen's 5-5 in the playoffs, right? With those losses primarily coming to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Lamar's 2-4 in the playoffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got 2 wins,
Good
Houston
point.
Texans this year, and he beat Tennessee a few years ago. So, you know what I mean? Like there hasn't really been a signature. I mean, I guess you could say this year is a signature like playoff win for the Ravens led by Lamar Jackson, but their losses are to the Chargers. They lost to Buffalo in 2021 and then obviously the Chiefs this year. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like that
That's
was
fair.
basically
That's
my
fair.
logic when it came down to
Yeah.
it is,
My
you
logic,
know,
yeah, my logic was more just, 2 pretty much undisputed MVPs. Even though he can't really get it done in the playoffs, his talent um, is able to get them there in the first place. We can say that about a lot of QBs, but just 2 MVPs, it's hard to argue. So that's why I have him at 2 there.
and that's perfectly fair to Josh Allen. So I don't think Josh Allen even has one. So I mean like
Mm-hmm.
that's perfectly fair. Um So you had Lamar at 2, I had Allen at 2. I'm just gonna flip flop with you here, and I've got Lamar at 3 for basically the same reasons that I
Okay.
just talked about. Um, you know, MVP season, dazzled like in that game against Jacksonville, played really well against the 49ers, blew out the Miami Dolphins. A lot of signature wins this year in the regular season. But when the Chiefs walked in the AFC Championship game when it mattered most, you know, I hate to say that Lamar didn't show up. I think the game plan wasn't really in his favor. I think they went away from their strengths all year. Um, and like I always say here, like we could be having an entirely different conversation if they play the game that they played like the whole month or two prior because they were chilling teams. But you run into Kansas City. That's why Patrick Mahomes number one. That's why we're talking to them as being like the next dynasty in the NFL after the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. So I'm gonna have Lamar at 3 here.
Yeah, solid pick at 3. I could definitely see why you put Allen ahead of Lamar. Just Lamar just can't seem to get down the playoffs, like you said. Um, and that pretty much, doesn't Josh Allen doesn't have as many MVPs as Lamar, but does have that better playoff record. Um, so yeah, I think that's a fair point. So I'll
Yeah.
say my number 3, Brandon. This might be a bit of a surprise to you. Might be a little biased, but I'm rolling with my guy Joe Burrow. Um,
Okay.
Despite the injuries, just what he's done, in 2021 and 2022, to completely turn the Bengals franchise around. I could see it from a firsthand view after watching Andy Dalton and Carson Palmer for the for the previous 15, 20 years of my life. To see a guy like Joe Burrow and you go into each week expecting to win the game, it's a real game changer as a Bengals fan, and even as an NFL fan. I know you have the injury argument, the injury prone argument, but just but you can't. Burrow is one of the only quarterbacks that's beat Mahomes in the playoffs. Um, and that year's without an O line. And then he's, like you said, a couple calls away in 2022 from beating him again, in that AFC Championship game last year. A couple calls go their way. If 3 of the 5 starting offensive linemen were playing, that could be probably was a factor as well. But so I'm rolling with Joe Burrow at 3. I know the injuries, might catch up to him. One more injury, I think you could definitely say he's injury prone. I'm not labeling him as injury prone just yet. The ACL, can't really do anything about that. The wrist and that kind of thing happens. So yeah, I'm rolling with Burrow at 3. The way he's turned the Bengals franchise around, um, and given hope as Bengals fans, made it to a Super Bowl after the Bengals have won a playoff game since 1981. Take that in consideration as well. Um, so yeah, got to roll Joe Burrow, even though he didn't have even the games he didn't play great, partially because of injuries, but just gotta roll with him at 3.
Yeah, and I think everything you said there is justified. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there is that element of is Joe Burrow injury prone, right? But he's 5-2 in the playoffs, right? One of those losses being to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and the other one being in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So you can't really deny that they've had success in the playoffs. And even with being injury prone, right? Like whatever you want to classify it right now, um, that if he is healthy, that's a playoff team every year. You know
Right.
what I mean? Because of him, right? Him being on the field makes them a playoff team. And yeah, they were like a game away from making the playoffs this year, where he played up until what, like week 11, 12. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I
like
think
he
it was
played
like
like a
week 10.
he
They're like
played like a
5 and
little over
5.
half the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they still made the playoffs. So there is talent. They're well coached. So 100% expect them to be back in the playoffs next year and contending. Um,
Just gonna
going
be a
into my
matter of
four
just gonna
pick.
be a matter of if you get past that 1-5 on the Chiefs there.
Yeah, it's
So it's gonna
it's
be a
one of
matter
those
for a lot
things.
of these quarterbacks. It's
Yeah,
gonna
and
be
like
about beating
we've
Mahomes.
only talked about AFC quarterbacks so far in this episode, right? Like we've only ranked AFC quarterbacks, and that tells you a lot, right? So we've
Mm-hmm.
got like Mahomes, and then a bunch of AFC quarterbacks down here, and so uh at my 4 pick, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna have Joe Burrow, like you
Okay.
had him at 3. Um, Highest career completion percentage in NFL history. It's 68. 97 touchdown passes to just 37 interceptions. You cannot deny it. Like I said, the 5-2 record in the playoffs. He's a stud. He's the franchise guy there. Um, I would, as long as they can keep that core together, keep the coaching staff. I know they did lose the offensive coordinator this year.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can keep Jamar in the building and just offensive linemen, everybody as a whole, if you can keep that team together, because it's shown in the past that it can work, right? They
Mm-hmm.
went to a Super Bowl and then they lost an AFC Championship game where, like you said, a few calls go their way, they're probably back in the Super Bowl, right? And then we're probably having an entirely different discussion about Mahomes and Burrow. We probably are saying like Mahomes and like Burrow's like not too far behind them, but we're pretty much saying that
Yeah.
Mahomes is outclassing the field by a wide margin at this point. So yeah, I'm gonna have Burrow at 4. I know I joked a lot with you this year. I was like, oh, you could probably bring in a guy who's a lot cheaper because he does have the highest, contract in NFL history. Um, I believe as of at the beginning of the season. I
I
don't know if
think
it's still that,
I
but
think it's still I think he's still the highest. Because Jalen got his bag last year.
and then he
Mahomes,
got paid like immediately after.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I joked around with you about that just because I was like, okay, if he's injury prone, you're paying a guy a lot of money to pray he doesn't get hurt. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in particularly the AFC, but the NFL as a whole, if your number one quarterback, your franchise dude who's a top 5 quarterback when healthy is just not there, like good luck. You know what I mean? Maybe saying the same thing about the Chiefs too. If Mahomes were to tear his ACL next year, God forbid, would you pick him to win the Super Bowl or even win the AFC? I wouldn't. He's so electric, and yeah, they got other playmakers, and they've got Andy Reid and the coaching staff, but like having that quarterback matters, right? So if he can stay on the field, like they're gonna win a lot of games next year, um, and they're gonna be contenders. As I see it, I don't see why not. The question is, like we said with the Ravens, like we said with Buffalo, is even if they're fantastic all year, are they getting past
Like
the Kansas
literally,
City Chiefs?
like what we've seen with the Ravens. We just thought the Ravens were unbeatable,
Yeah.
going into the playoffs. Um, and then no, the Chiefs going to their Baltimore first ever
Yeah.
away
And
game or second away game besides the Bills one the week
yeah,
prior.
and that's what I was just gonna point out is the Chiefs and Mahomes hadn't played like an away playoff game. So that was like the question mark going into this year in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. Is like, okay, the Chiefs are kind of a step behind. They're gonna have to go on the road at least once or twice, right? Are they a team that's able to continue that momentum from Arrowhead into, Cincinnati, into a Buffalo? And they did it with ease, right?
Right.
So there's no real question marks there about can this team go on the road and do it? They can do it anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's just a matter of can you go toe to toe with him? And Burrow's one win against Mahomes in that AFC Championship game, right? I'm pretty sure the Chiefs were blowing them out, right? Wasn't it like 21-3, or maybe I
The
have that
first
confused?
one when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, I think it was like 21-3 or like
At
17 to
half,
3, something like that.
something like
Yeah.
that. And then the Bengals stormed back
Yeah.
and
They
won
shut
it in
Mahomes down in the
overtime,
second
right?
half.
What?
They shut Mahomes down in the second half. I think they scored 3 points, including the
And
overtime.
didn't it still go to overtime?
It went to overtime because the Bengals were down by like 17 or whatever it was, and then um they went to overtime. They picked Mahomes. I think it was a 3-and-out. I think it was a 3-and-out interception, and then
Yeah.
the Bengals kicked the field goal to go to the Super Bowl. That's
Yeah.
the drive after.
Yeah. So again, Mahomes, I have it 4, right? Definitely a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, no doubt,
You
right?
mean
And we
Burrow? You
talk
mean
about,
Burrow at
oh,
four?
yeah, excuse me. Yeah, Burrow at 4. He's the only active guy to beat Mahomes in the playoffs, right? Um, but that game was a comeback and it took you overtime. You didn't dominate that. You know what I mean? You dominated maybe the second half, right? So I'm not taking anything away from the win.
They still
I'm just
won.
saying we have yet to see a team just go in to a Kansas City or even host a team and then just like be the better team the whole game. Haven't seen it,
That's
right?
fair.
Because
That's a fair point.
the
Yeah,
Bengals weren't the better team that first half of that AFC
they
Championship
weren't the
game.
better
They
team.
were the
They weren't
second
the
half.
better team. Period. in
No,
my
well,
opinion. They just made
yeah,
plays. They just made big plays on the stretch.
fair, right? But my point here is it's going to be tough to beat a Kansas City. And I know this is a little off topic, right? We just haven't seen a team in the playoffs do it where Mahomes just gets shut down. Really, the only one I can
Well,
remember is
Super
the one
Bowl,
against
yeah,
Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl,
yeah,
right? And
that's
that
fair.
was, he was missing like 4 of his 5 offensive linemen. It was kind of a mess. And, they were playing Tom Brady, so you can't really deny that. Um, Again, I know that's really off topic, but I'm going to have Burrow at 4. Um, but he's going to be probably my number one guy to watch going into next year because if he can stay healthy and they can figure it out, they're probably whipped the best, experience wise, talent wise, to go into a Kansas City or even host Kansas City
Hmm.
and, kind of go toe to toe with them because we saw Buffalo, we saw with Baltimore.
Their
And
defense does still scare me a little bit. I'll see how they draft the defense there. But yeah, off topic.
yeah,
We'll stick to the top 5 QBs. Um,
yeah,
oh, one note I did want to say that I noticed the other day that I saw a video of like Joe and Jamar at an NBA game. I want to say it was like the
yeah,
Mavs
Lakers
game,
game. Yeah.
and I noticed when Joe Burrow I don't even know who's dabbed it up. Someone on the Lakers or something. I noticed he used his
Yeah.
left hand instead of his right hand. I was like, is this still really not healed? That happened in like
Hmm.
November. I just thought it
That's
was
a little
interesting.
that's some
I thought it
attention
was
to detail
interesting.
right there, Steve.
I
That's
know.
some attention to detail and
But
notice
like he was
something
like
like
really like
that.
hiding. He was like making sure like they wouldn't touch his right wrist. I don't know, maybe he's just being very cautious, precautionary, but just a note. Just it is slightly
That's
concerning as a
crazy.
Bengals
That's
fan. Is all I'm
crazy
gonna
if
say.
it's the end of February and they're still concerned about it. That's crazy.
I mean, we'll
We'll
see though.
see.
Hopefully he'll be all right.
All right, so give
Come
me your 4.
come September. My number 4, Brayden. This might be a little bit of a surprise for you. Kind of an under the radar guy.
Okay.
Um, I'm going with Jared Goff at 4.
Ooh.
The way he's not spectacular by any means. He's not like Burrow or Allen or Mahomes or Lamar, but he makes the plays he needs to. He brought the Lions to the NFC Championship game, scored 24 points in the first half against one of the best defenses in the league, and then kind of was shut down in the
They
second
probably
half
should have
there.
won that game if we're being
They should have
100%
won that game.
honest.
They literally dominated pretty much the entire game, and then a couple things go the Niners' way. They have the Lions drop passes, fumbles. They pretty much choked away, but I didn't think it was Goff's fault at all. Um,
Yeah.
so the way same similar situation to Joe, in Cincinnati there, the way that Jared Goff, Lions haven't won a playoff game since since 1980 something. I think it was even before the Bengals maybe. Um,
Yeah.
the way they were, I think the first round was the Rams. I think they beat the Rams in the first round, right?
Yeah, they beat the Rams in the wild card and then they beat Tampa in the
And then they beat
divisional.
Tampa. So yeah, the two playoff games. I think Detroit has some hope now. You gotta give credit where credit's due. Goff makes the plays that he needs to. And was a couple of drop passes and some turnovers away from going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Similar to what Joe Burrow did with Cincy. So kind of the same thought process there. And that's why I have Jared Goff at 4.
I think that's completely fair. I really like it. It's definitely a hot take.
Yeah.
Top 5 and not, even if he's in your top 5 and not being 5, I think it's definitely a hot take. But you got to give flowers where flowers are due here. I mean, Jared Goff had an incredible season with the Lions. They're definitely, contenders. I think there's huge expectations for them next year. There were expectations this year. A lot of people had them winning the NFC North
Mm-hmm.
because I think people were like, okay, Minnesota is good, not great. Green Bay, we don't really know with Jordan Love. And then Chicago is, going to be Chicago, right? So it was kind of like almost by default that people were like, okay, Detroit's probably going to win this division. And then they did. Um, my Green Bay Packers probably, they're probably thinking about them a little bit right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Campbell loses a little sleep about Green Bay because a lot of people probably expected Detroit to run this division for a while and Green Bay to kind of fall off. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
Right.
So that's going to be a fun division to watch for years to come because you
Definitely.
got Jared Goff, who's still relatively young, who's still probably got, at least 7, 8 years ahead
Yeah.
of him.
And knock
Right.
and knock Dan Campbell all you want. This was his second year coaching. Like he'll learn from it, and
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. Absolutely.
the locker room respects him and how he handles it, I think they're in a good position there.
Yeah. And you can't blame him, you know, you can't blame him for doing what he did all year. He was very aggressive on 4th down, going for it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
did that in the NFC Championship game, and yeah, it bit them, but like that's what kind of got them there in the first place. So I can't really knock them too much. Yeah, they probably should have won the game. They probably should have been a little bit more conservative in those cases, but like, I can't really hate on him too much. So Jared Goff at 4, I like that. I think that's really fun. But now we're gonna get into our 5, and I'm gonna tell
Let
you
me
right now,
guess.
I don't
Wait, let
have
me
Jared
guess your
Goff at 5.
5. Let me
All
guess
right,
your
you
5.
can guess.
So you had four AFC guys. So you're definitely going NFC here, I think,
Or am I?
because you can't have 5 AFC would be definitely an overload.
You might be surprised.
You were really high on Brock Purdy all year. Maybe no, reasonably. I think he's an honorable mention for me.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know, like, or maybe your Packers bias comes out. You go Jordan Love.
maybe. Dak was
I'm
second in
going.
MVP voting.
I think I'm definitely not going Dak because you always say Dak's overrated. Not Jalen. Maybe like Herbert or T-Law. No way. I'm thinking. I think I'm gonna
There's
lock
that
in
young guy. There's that young guy down in Houston.
C.J. Stroud. I know you really like
Showstopper.
him, but I don't think he'd be in your top 5 yet. I think I'm gonna lock in Jordan Love as your 5.
So my number 5 is not going to be Jordan Love.
Ugh.
I think he's definitely top 10 going into next year. But I'm not going to have him that high
Did I
yet, just
mention the guy's
because
name when I was going through my
you
thought
did,
process?
you did,
So it's
and he does
Purdy.
play in the NFC, and he did just play in the Super Bowl. It's Brock
Right. That's
Purdy.
fair. That's
I
fair.
don't really know right now. Looking at the current landscape, I don't know how you can't have Brock Purdy in the conversation for top 5. He's two
Yeah, he's in the
seasons in.
conversation. He would probably been like my
He's
6 or
two
7.
He's 2 seasons in. He's played in a Super Bowl. The other year, he was in the NFC Championship game, and they probably would have had a chance at winning the game had he not screwed up his arm.
Right.
Right? Like the Eagles were the better team, but like we didn't really get to see what the 49ers were made of because Christian McCaffrey was throwing the ball. Right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? He's in my eyes, he's like 2 for 2, right? Because first year was kind of like, wow, like this is a really good story. Mr. Relevant, third string comes in and takes and is able to carry the momentum, even though it is a QB friendly scheme. He was able to still like not make mistakes for a guy who is a 7th round pick, the last pick in the draft, right? Not make the mistakes that would put his team in harm's way, still get him to the NFC Championship game and have it all kind of fall apart because of injury and then be in the Super Bowl next year. I can't really take, I can't take that away from him.
That's fair.
I understand why someone might not put him in the top 5, right? Because it is a QB friendly scheme. A lot of people argue you can put Mac Jones, you can put, whoever in that
Yeah, you
scheme,
said that.
and they would, yeah,
You
they
and
would be
Kresge.
able to find success, which is probably true, right? But the fact
No.
that, yeah, I mean, we could have a separate conversation about that, right? But, you know, I guess going away from that for a second, right? Like Brock Purdy went to overtime with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl,
Yeah,
right?
they should have won the game though.
And they exactly, right? So that's the way I look at it is like, okay, well, like they kind of fell apart his first year. The second year they're in the Super Bowl, right? So I can't really take that away from him. I can't put Dak ahead of him. I can't, right? I get Dak was second MVP voting, but Dak's failed to get out of the divisional round.
Yeah.
They had a perfect opportunity this year and it didn't work out.
Right.
Right? They've had other chances in prior years and haven't gotten it done. They fell to San Francisco the year before. They fell to San Francisco the year before that, right? So like Brock Purdy, yeah, maybe in a QB friendly scheme, but is not making the mistakes to put his team in harm's way.
That's fair.
You know what I
Takes
mean?
care of the
So
ball
I'm gonna have Purdy at
pervasively.
5. And then like honorable mentions, right? Just real quick. I would throw Dak in there just because he had a great season.
What
I would
about Jalen?
throw see
Is he still in the
few
is
steps
still in the
few steps
combo?
behind. This is gonna be a big year for Jalen. He's gotta kind of prove it.
Right.
Herbert, CJ Stroud, those names. So, but I'll let you go as we wrap up here. I'll let you do your 5. Curious.
My number 5 is your number 2, Braeden Josh Allen.
Okay.
You can't take it away from him. He's obviously one of the most versatile QBs in the league. You just to me just can't get it done against the
Jared Goff
Chiefs.
over Josh Allen.
I mean, but look at Jared Goff. Like, look what he's done for the franchise. Like, Jared Goff has made it just as far as Allen did, and this is really like
Yeah,
this
but
was Goff's like
the Bills
first
were
real
nothing.
year being on a good team, like for Detroit.
Yes.
And Josh Allen,
Yes,
um, Josh Allen is
but Josh
obviously,
Allen's got to face Mahomes.
yeah, but he doesn't win against Mahomes. So like, how could
You
you
just Brock
know
Purdy.
he'd be able to win the big game? After it's been, but the thing to
Yes,
me, Braden, is it's been 5 years for Josh. It's been like he can't get past him. I feel like if you gave Goff and the Lions like a couple tries at like the
so
Niners, I think they'd win eventually. But the
let me
Bills just
just
can't
ask
beat
you
them.
real quick. Let me just ask you real quick. If the Bengals play the Chiefs in the playoffs next year, right? And the Chiefs smack them. Burrow plays bad, Bengals play bad, Chiefs look great. Are we going to sit here and say, oh, maybe Burrow, that was just lucky that one year? They came
Yeah,
back, the Chiefs played bad the second half.
you could
So
easily say
then, you
that.
know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. But continue.
No, I kind of got everything. I just I mean, yes, I could put him at 4, but the way that Goff kind of turned the lines around, I think similar to what Josh has done. But I think there's just something about Goff that I really like, just the way he kept his composure and um, you know, basically should have went to the Super Bowl but didn't. But um,
Fair.
they
That's
they
fair.
could flip flop if you really wanted to. But I could just kind of
That's fair.
the turnovers for